what's up, OV Tribe? Thanks for joining me today. Today we are going to be filming our final video in the gear guide for new backpackers list. This is video number 7. If you haven't seen any of the previous videos, make sure to hop back and watch those. They've had a lot of really good value in them. Today we're going to be covering clothing, things that you want to look for, things you want to avoid on the trail. And then also we're going to go over some just miscellaneous accessory type items that I don't leave home without. So let's go ahead and dive into those, starting with clothing. So clothing, there's a lot more to it than I think initial backpackers realize. There's things you definitely want to avoid and there's things you want to look for. So let's go ahead and start with more of the base layers. So for a base layer, you're going to hear a lot about wool. So this is a shirt right here. It's a merino wool, which merino, you could dive into the real specifics, but just think of it as a premium wool. It's usually a more comfortable wool. It's finer, quicker drying, things like that. But it's kind of a premium wool. The reason that you would want to wear wool is hydrophobic, which means when it gets wet, it's going to dry or get rid of that water as fast as possible. Phobic means it's scared of or pushes away. So wool is just really fast drying. The other benefit of this is because of its natural properties, it is odor resistant. So instead of having to bring a new shirt for every day while you're out on the trail, you can make a wool shirt last a long time before you need to wash it, which means you're packing less gear. So wool is extremely valuable as a base layer. So shirts are really good with wool. I've seen some underwears out there. I've never tried those. I've heard pros and cons, but the other thing would definitely be socks. So right here, I picked up some $5 socks that have a higher content of wool in them. Just so you know, don't be afraid when you start looking at wool socks and they're about $20 or a shirt might be $50. Wool is more expensive, but I promise you it's really valuable. Do you need it? No. And I'll get over some things that you could look for alternatives. But when you are shopping for wool, the main thing that you want to look at is, especially if you're budget shopping, is the percentage of wool. So in this particular package here, this is the lowest wool percentage that I'll ever go. We've got a 57% wool. I didn't even realize that I'd bought something with that low of wool. But as I read down this other list, I realized why I did it. That's because there's 24% polyester, 18% nylon. So these are all items that are also fairly quick drying compared to a cotton or a spandex. So typically with a wool sock, I'm going to only run something that has about 70% wool, if not higher. Again, you're gonna see those prices go from about $10 a pair up to $20 a pair. But the reason that this is extremely useful is when you take your feet out of your boots, your feet are just going to wick away that moisture. They're going to evaporate really quick. It's going to help cool off your feet really fast. If you've got a boot that does vent well, it's going to keep your feet very dry throughout the day, which is just way more healthy for your feet and keeps you feeling way better. So wool is extremely great as a base layer. So there are a couple things you'd want to avoid on the trail, and that would be cotton and spandex. So spandex is a little bit less talked about, but I'm gonna briefly touch on that. But cotton, there's actually a term out there that says cotton kills. And the reason that they say that is when cotton gets wet, it doesn't dry, and then it's gonna keep you really cold. So if you're in a cold situation and you get wet in cotton, it might be the last thing you do, right? Hopefully not. But cotton just it performs really bad when it hits moisture or different things like that. So hiking in just regular jeans is usually frowned upon, or if your shirt is mainly made out of cotton, you may want to look at something else such as a wool product or some other synthetics. So what are some other options besides cotton? Those would be polyester and nylon or different types of synthetics. The kind of the word you're looking for is a wicking shirt, something that can protect you or help disperse your sweat or the moisture that you might get if you get rained on, help disperse that and dry quickly. Polyester works really well, nylon as well. Those synthetics are just going to be much better than a cotton. So let's talk about why you would want to avoid spandex. Spandex is in a lot of activewear, but it's starting to get a reputation for holding on to water, which means it's not going to dry nearly as fast as a regular full synthetic would or a wool would. So if you can, try to just get a lower percentage of spandex. This particular sock, like I mentioned, only has 1% of its content as spandex, which is why, even though it doesn't have as high a percentage of wool, it's still a pretty good sock. So avoid spandex because that holds onto water. Avoid cotton because that also holds onto water and doesn't dry. For your pants, you're not really going to see wool pants, so again, you're looking for just something that might be wicking or a synthetic type layer. So those are some general tips for clothing when you're going out backpacking. So what about boots? This is something that I kind of had to learn the hard way when I was younger, but however much weight is on your boot transfers or multiplies itself to how much weight it could be in your pack. So let's say you add just a few ounces on your boot, that could be comparable to having a ton of extra pounds in your backpack. You want to have as light a weight boot as you possibly can. So if you're going on designated trails and you're not maybe going off-road or carrying an extremely heavy pack, a lot of people are turning to trail runners. Trail runner shoes are extremely lightweight. It's going to help you feel like you can go farther and faster and be a great option. If you are carrying a heavy load or you're going off trail or blazing more of your own trails while you're out hiking, you're going to want to look at something that at least goes up to your ankle. I typically like the mid-height boots, and that's going to give me enough ankle support but also keep it really light. Again, make sure you're looking at the weight of those boots because that really adds up on longer trips. If you have a heavy boot, it feels like 10 or 20 extra pounds in your backpack by the end of the day. So make sure you're looking for the lightest weight boot that you can have. So let's dive over a few things that I'm not going to leave home without. These things are things that are always in my backpack. I've talked about a few of these things in our survival video or our how to avoid a life flight video. So if you haven't seen that, make sure to jump over to that. These are things that I definitely don't leave home without. And then these are a few other things that might not be so much survival oriented, but are still extremely important. So first thing I'm going to talk about is a headlamp. I always have a headlamp with extra batteries. The last thing you want to do is get out there on the trail and not have something like that. I used to carry 2 headlamps just to be safe, but now I always carry my cell phone and I carry a battery backup. So I usually carry 1 headlamp with extra batteries, and then I have extra light through my cell phone. So speaking of cell phones, that's something I also never leave home without. I always have maps on my cell phone so that I always know what I'm getting into. If you don't have a cell phone and don't have a map app on there, you can always revert back to paper maps, but always know where you're going and have that map available. Also, if you are using a cell phone, something that I never leave home without is a battery backup. And typically on my battery backups, I like to have a small solar panel on that. It doesn't really work as a solar panel, but what it does is it allows you to have an emergency option. So if you needed to just get 1 phone call out, that's going to charge enough to charge your phone and get that phone call out. So I'm always leaving home with a battery backup that usually has a solar charger on it. Diving through a few more things, I always have a source of fire starter, and then I also like to have duct tape. That really helps with all sorts of things from splints to wrapping up blisters, and then you've always got a fire starter. I like to have 2 fire starters with me at all times on the trail. I also like to carry rope. Usually I'm carrying paracord, and here I've got 2 different little bracelets of paracord. That just keeps it wrapped up and nice, but this can be unwrapped and used for a whole variety of things, including emergency essentials to just more things right around your camp. I'm always going out with a knife. I like to carry more minimalist knives that are just going to be lightweight on the trail. So this is a lightweight leek Kurashaw. And then I do like to have multi-tools, but multi-tools can get really heavy when you're backpacking. So this is just a little tiny baby multi-tool that I've used. You've got the pliers, you've got a wire cutter, and a few little things on there. So if I feel like I'm going in a situation where I might need something like that, I like to have this with me as well. Again, just a really small multi-tool and a knife. Never leave home without that. I've covered this in different videos, but make sure you've always got a water purification system. It's nice if you can have multiple water purification systems, or maybe have a couple tablets. If you're going to be purifying through something like a Sawyer, you can have a few tablets as a backup in case something happens to your filter. But that is your lifeline out there on the trail. All right, so getting to some of the last things that are on my list, I also always like to have sunscreen or a very protective hat with a long sleeve shirt. I wear long sleeve shirts a lot just because I don't always love to wear sunscreen. And then the last thing you ever want to do is get out on the trail and not have any toilet paper. So make sure you've got toilet paper in your pack at all times. I like to tuck mine under the hood of my backpack where I can forget about it, but I always remember it when I need it. So Make sure you have toilet paper. What I'd actually recommend as well is that you bring wet wipes. Wet wipes obviously have dual purpose, but another one of the purposes, you can take a wet wipe bath per se. Helps you feel a little bit cleaner out there on the trail, get some of that sweat off you and whatnot. And sometimes that's one of the last things I like to do before I go to bed. It helps me just feel a little bit cleaner before I get into that sleeping bag. So those are the accessories that I'm not leaving home without. You've also learned a little bit about clothing. This is going to wrap up our gear guide for new backpackers. I hope that you guys have learned a lot and that you feel like you're totally prepared to get out there and try your first backpacking trip, or that you've learned a lot just to apply to your future backpacking trips, even if you're a veteran. Thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't seen any of those other videos, make sure to hop back over. Also, make sure that you jump over to outdoorvitals.com/checklist. That's where you're going to get our checklist of your backpacking checklist for all the gear that you need to bring. And then also you're going to get our small food guide that's going to go over calorie per ounces. It's going to have a calorie per ounce calculator on there for you. And it's just going to help you prepare your food a little bit better. So if you haven't seen that, jump over to outdoorvitals.com/checklist. Any other questions, make sure to hit us up. You can hit us up at support@outdoorvitals.com or at outdoorvitals.com. Thanks for tuning in, OV Tribe, and we'll see you on the next video.